Hello and welcome back to Scouching, and today it is an exciting one. Ever since I started analyzing the NHL Draft a few years ago, the USA NTDP team has been an absolute hoot to watch almost every single year. And in my view, this year is no different. And in my viewings of all of the players on this team that I'm excited about, Logan Cooley is probably just the biggest rock star of them all. And in my view, he is one of, if not the most exciting, high-octane, dynamic offensive forwards that you can find in this year's draft. And before we get into the video, I just wanted to highlight some data points for Logan Cooley. As of right now, he holds the #1 position in offensive controlled zone transition percentage among forwards, and it currently sits at an absolutely bonkers 87.1%. And being over 80% over a full 7-game span is extremely rare, and to my recollection, it has only happened 3 times. In my 7-game set, he attempted 22.7 dangerous passes per 60 minutes, which is the tops of anyone I've tracked ever, and he's completing 43% of those pass attempts, which puts him 7th in my data set for this season. Of all of the pass attempts I tracked him making this year, 30% were headed towards the middle of the ice in the offensive zone. No one I have ever tracked has broken 30% before. When you add in his rate of dangerous shot attempts, his offensive threat metric goes to 32, which has only ever been achieved by Seth Jarvis, and so far he seems to be working out pretty well. So basically every 2 minutes of ice time Logan Cooley was on the ice this year, he was either taking a dangerous shot attempt himself or trying to set one up for his line mates. Now, his offensive transition involvement was a little more limited, sitting 33rd in my data set, and at 31.6%, that's not terrible, but it is lower than I would expect for a player like Logan Cooley, but so many of them were done with carrying the puck, and he was so reliable in that area of the ice that he was basically just a reliable way of getting pucks out of the defensive end and into the offensive end with control, and I would like to see this leveraged more in the future. So the data seems to paint a picture, in my view, of an absolute offensive wizard who could stand to involve himself a little bit more defensively than he already does, and be involved a little bit more in offensive transitions than he already is because of how efficient he is in that direction. And there may be cons that we'll get into later, but the pros, in my opinion, heavily outweigh the cons, especially when you think about where he could be in a few years. And in both the positives and negatives, the video backs all of this up. Logan Cooley is, bar none, one of the most gifted and creative playmakers in this entire draft, and I don't think there's that many players that can challenge him. He's just got remarkable skill with his hands, and he uses it to actually solve problems on the fly, rather than just impressing the fans and scouts in the crowd. He knows how to get things done using his skill. And it comes out constantly in ways that surprise you and clearly seem to surprise his opponents, as he's able to drop pucks into open ice when you least expect it, shovel pucks out of inside lanes to players in open ice on the outside lanes. And I would love to see Cooley quarterbacking more rushes going up the ice, with the sense of deception that he has with those hands he's gifted with, and the flashes of agility and pace that I've seen out of him. And looking back through my video that I've pulled while prepping for this video, it seems like half of what I pulled could fit somewhere in the move category, and I could just play clip after clip after clip of Cooley taking complex passes in stride, finding ways through pressure, and just earning transitions with the puck if that's what you want. But he's not just a playmaker. He can also use that skill to set up scoring chances on his own and cut inside the middle of the ice with it. And it was funny in Game 7 that the brilliance of Logan Cooley's offensive mind came out in a way that I hadn't seen before, with a shot pass that fooled even me. I really thought that he was shooting the puck on net in this situation, but he was trying to go backdoor with a shot pass, and that caught me by surprise. And another thing I really love about Logan Cooley that I don't really see a whole lot of with skilled offensive forwards at this age is that he just never seems to panic. Guys can come at him and he just uses his skill to solve the problem at hand and get around them. And on that note about other young players that play kinda like Logan Cooley, where things do get a little bit questionable is that I caught him overhandling pucks and skating into way too much pressure a little bit too often and biting off more than he can chew. And I'm not sure that's really going to work out for him down the road, especially since it doesn't work for him as much now, but he certainly has the talent to at least try. So it's going to be about finding that balance where he's able to get away with what he's trying without giving pucks away at inopportune times. But on that note, the plays he was trying to make didn't always work, But you have to go back to the data here. He was still top 3 in slot pass attempts and number 1 amongst large sample players, and he's top 10 in completing those attempts. So even if he's a volume playmaker, he's still completing those plays a lot. So in my view, the offensive production potential is absolutely massive. But that doesn't mean there's not room for improvement with Logan Cooley as well. Cooley brings great skill and stick work with the puck on his own stick, but without the puck, I found Logan Cooley to be far more inconsistent at both ends of the ice. And I found that he often seemed to struggle sufficiently challenging puck carriers on defensive rushes, which for a center might be a bit of an issue down the line. And sometimes in the defensive zone, I found that the feet stopped moving at really inopportune times, which I think got exacerbated in the NCAA games I saw him play in. And another thing to be aware of as a center in my view is to be aware of potential passing lanes and where opponents are behind you in the defensive zone. And I found that Cooley could get caught puck watching and drawn a little bit out of position, and passes would go straight through him to waiting players behind him. And sometimes this happened even as low as deep below the goal line, where Cooley would drift below the goal line and leave a man open in front of the net, which is definitely not something you want to see out of him. But when he does cause turnovers, he certainly gets the puck moving in the right direction, brings out that trademark efficiency, whether it's carries or passing the puck across blue lines, and he becomes the Logan Cooley we all know and love. So all in all, in my view at least, the positives that we've gone over already to this point heavily outweigh the negatives, and I think the negatives can be worked on considering what makes his positives so positive. In full stride at this level, taking complex passes that might not be tape to tape can be kind of difficult, but he often does it in stride, makes it look easy, and continues moving play in the right direction constantly, which certainly helps. And once the puck's in the offensive zone, he's basically lights out. So the best part of Logan Cooley's game is pretty easy to me. He is an unbelievably talented, creative playmaker in the offensive zone. In terms of offensive potential in the area of playmaking, I think he's top in this entire draft class with just how projectable and exciting he is. As I said before, there are tons of examples I have that I could pull and show to you, and even when it didn't quite work out for him, the ways that he's able to create plays and the variety with which he's able to do so is really, really impressive. In full stride, in the middle of the ice, off the boards, below the goal line, in open ice, under pressure. He's got a lot going on in this area of the game. And he's able to do this in ways that I think are really projectable. At high pace or low pace, he can find ways to put pucks through or around defenders, get pucks into open space, and just use his skill in ways that I think will work. And even at slower pace, he knows how to adapt to oncoming defenders, get pucks into space, and try to create plays out of that situation as well. So he doesn't need to be going 100 miles an hour to make a play. He can do a variety of different things in the offensive zone. And no situation is too complex for him, and there are some moments where he just gets you out of his seat with the skill and playmaking he can bring to the table. The good part, in my view, is the dynamic transition game with Logan Cooley. He drove tremendous transition results, and there are reasons why those happen. It wasn't just luck, in my view. And he can achieve these results in a variety of ways, even beating out defenders on offensive puck retrievals. It didn't come out a ton, but it's something that I would really like to see more of considering how quick I saw Cooley going at times. With his hands, he can take bad passes in stride and get across blue lines without really missing a beat, without losing much momentum, and just continue moving play in the right direction. And transporting pucks up the ice, there were just tons and tons of bright spots, even if there were moments where he could skate into a little bit too much pressure here and there. And yes, he can be daring and confident, sometimes to a fault, but if there's a bit of development when it comes to his quickness and the pace at which he uses his skill down the road, and combining that with the flashes of deception and misdirection I saw out of him, he could be an absolutely lethal player in transition and the offensive zone. And the insane transition data also came from moments of Cooley using his footwork and crossovers to drive defenders wide and show a burst of speed to get right through them and try to make a play in the offensive zone after gaining that offensive entry. And I would like to see this leveraged more to see that offensive zone transition involvement percentage increase to higher levels. He's a gifted puck carrier, and I would like to see him be a primary breakout option down the road. The not so good part with Cooley is also pretty straightforward, and it's just his defensive awareness and consistency. And I mentioned a bit of overhandling tendencies earlier, but I think that that's more a product of just how talented he is and figuring out the balance between what he can and can't get away with. And the overwhelming positivity in that area doesn't feel quite right to put it in this area of the video. But the bigger issue to me is this defensive awareness, where being aware of passing lanes and keeping his feet moving defensively can be a bit of an issue that cause problems. And in my view, it did limit the amount of time he had to play with the puck in the first place. And this is something that isn't super uncommon to young players, but a little bit more quickness coming out of his turns on defensive rushes could help him keep up with those defensive rushes and continue challenging puck carriers as well. And after causing those turnovers, making plays like this one below your own goal line is a bit of a different kind of a lack of awareness. But luckily these examples weren't particularly common, and I think they can just be good learning experiences moving forward for Logan Cooley. And when these turnovers happen in the defensive end, there are bright signs where he can just keep his feet moving, make the simple first pass first before he looks for something more complicated. And I found that at times he could be an effective breakout generator when play was deep in the defensive zone. It's just going to be a matter of finding that delicate balance that works for him. So through all the ups and downs of Logan Cooley, in my opinion, there are way more ups than downs. And the quality of play when he's at his best, which is usually when he has the puck, just needs to be brought also a little bit more when he doesn't have the puck. And to me, that feels like an easier developmental path than building on fundamentals that may be lacking, because with Cooley, the fundamentals are really, really strong. It's just they need to be brought to more areas of the ice more often. Now, Cooley could still stand to benefit from being a little bit quicker to explode out of his turns, and just quicker in general to be an even more threatening presence, both offensively and defensively. But he might need to be a little bit more defensively aware of passing lanes and shooting lanes, and shoulder checking a little more often than he did to be sure he's staying in the way of play to prevent dangerous chances from inside the middle of his defensive zone. And as a gifted puck carrier, he will need to find that delicate balance of puck management and puck handling, what he can get away with and what he can't, and how to be as effective and dangerous as he possibly can be. And the inopportune and unnecessary turnovers that I caught once in a while, along with the tendency to sort of skate into pressure a little bit more often than I would like, does knock him down to a 2 in this category, but it is a strong 2. This is a great offensive mind that I think projects well, but just needs to be rounded out a little bit over the next little while. So for a guy who creates dangerous offense as much as he does, who has this issue where play can sometimes die on his stick from overhandling, to me that just means that there's just a lot of room for improvement in an area that's already outstanding. So the potential of this player as a puck transporter and a playmaker everywhere in the offensive zone is it's just wonderful. He can be a great offensive rush threat, taking pucks in stride, dropping a shoulder, and keeping his feet moving and attacking the net. If defenders get in the way, he's got the skill to make the play that he needs to make look easy and create dangerous offense from there. And he may need to use his feet and stick a little bit more actively defensively, but when he does get engaged, he can cause really impressive turnovers in the offensive zone, and then his mind immediately goes to making plays in those situations as well, which I caught a few times. So not many players in this year's draft are as creative or as skilled and as successful doing so as Logan Cooley. And I rarely found that he had skill just for the sake of having skill. And as a final treat for the final clip of the video, I'll show you a lacrosse goal attempt that he made in Game 7 that I tracked, which is always fun to show people. So if you're an NHL team looking for offense up the middle of the ice this season, it's pretty simple. Logan Cooley is your man. He is in my top group with Shane Wright and yes, Brad Lambert for this year's draft, and I think he is part of the discussion for a player that could turn out to be the best of anyone in this year's draft. And I just haven't seen that many players this year who is as impressive in as many areas, especially with the puck, as Logan Cooley in my work. And he could match on an NHL team with pretty much anyone who has finishing ability or the ability to create space for him to play with. And if his level of engagement and imposition can improve as it should for a center, and his agility and ability to generate speed coming out of his turns with his first few steps take a step, he could easily become one of the most dynamic offensive weapons in this year's draft, and one of the most exciting players in this draft for fans to really, really get behind. So that's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, you can click all the buttons below me so you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could subscribe on Patreon or join the YouTube membership program by clicking join below. You'll get access to exclusive visualizations and data cards, access to a Discord server, data sheets for hundreds of drafted and undrafted prospects around the world, and plenty of other goodies you can check out there. Or you can pick up some merchandise from the Scouchwear shop, where 50% of profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that's it, and we'll see you in the next one.